today's tutorial. What we'll be learning today is JavaScript. So what I'll teach about JavaScript today is how to print hello world. The next thing is about variables. I'll also talk about data types, talk about basic operators. I'll also talk about comparison operators for that case, not forgetting about conditional branching or usage of things like if and else. I'll also talk about logical operators. Another thing that I'll mention is I'll do functions. I'll just mention about functions, and in functions I will define things called the local variables and global variables or outer variables. So outer variables. And also I'll talk about parameters when it comes to functions. The next thing that I'll talk even on functions is default value, or setting a default value for functions, for function variables. And also talk about alternate default values. If something goes wrong or you don't expect that data, what do? And also do a return or output of data. So on the same, after the functions, I'll deal with loops. That includes while and for loop. Not also forgetting another thing is just functions, or like with the functions that I will do, I will also use functions to do the loops. Yeah, and then I will do more practice. So we'll do more practice. For this case, what I'll be using here is a code called run.js, just to help me run my JavaScript. So I've added this as a comment so that it won't be disrupt my output on this end. So the first thing that I'll do with this is just to mention about so there are many ways to output items. One of it is to console log, maybe hello world, or just let's say hello world, welcome to Momi Foundation. As you can see from the right side that I have my output. One of the ways, another way is to do an alert, but I don't know if this will work with so alert hello. So for this one, it will work on the browser for alert. Then the next thing can be to return hello world. So the only problem with return is that it needs to be inside a function. So for this case, although I'll be speaking about functions later on, or functions are just like fundamental blocks, or what is called the building blocks of a program. So it's very vital to understand. So how to write a function? There are different ways. You can write the traditional one, or you can do it based on like what's called the other functions. But what we'll deal right now is basic. So we'll deal about just like a function. Maybe we will say it's function to print words, just like that. Let's just make it generic. So So we'll put these curly braces, and then what we'll do is now to have our return inside the function, and then now call our function. Call our function is just to tell our program to print these words, or for the sake of this, we can say print hello or print welcome. So we'll say print welcome, but now don't forget calling that function, you'll need this. So as you can see here, we have hello world. So for now, what I'll do is just leave this function and come and define it later for that case. So when it comes to defining of a variable, what's a variable? Variable is just something that stores an input or stores a value. For instance, we can decide that is hello world welcome to mommy to be a variable. Let's name it constant message. So this is the message we want to print. So, and then what I can do is just copy this and paste here. So with this message, what we can do with this message is we can do what we done previously. We can do console log the message, which now prints the message to the right side or the output side. Another thing is, instead of returning here hello world, we can return our variable which we have stored. So we can say return message. As you can see, another hello world welcome to mommy is printed. So let me just push this towards this end. So as you can see, what we have talked about currently is outputting data or printing. Let me just say output. Paste on the methods, which is like you can use return, but the return you will use on a function. But on another way, we can do a console log for that message, and also another thing you can do alert. But as I mentioned, alert is mostly used on browser. So as we have mentioned about variables, stores our data, and one of it is hello world welcome to mommy foundation. So another thing is we have three ways of defining a variable. So we'll have constant, let, and the old one called var. So we will assume var is almost like it was used most of the time. For instance, var and then message, hello world welcome to mommy. So this var was used a long time ago, or all the scripts use var. But for now, what the current scripts use is what is called the const and let. So for now, when you say something is constant, it just means it is constant. It is not changeable. But if you want to change maybe certain variable, or you mean that you can change variable, you just make use of let. So there are two ways you can define a variable currently. Just use constant and let. But as I mentioned, let is something that you can change. You can change with time. For instance, if I mention the let message to be this, I can come and say here, I can come and redefine message and say message is not equals to that, but it is equals to I am Hezron, and then what I'll return is I am Hezron. So when you want to change something, or you need to change a variable, you just make use of let instead of constant. But if you want something to be constant, for instance, in your item you are using constant, let's say pi, which is 3.142. Because you don't want this to be changed, you just make use of constant to define constant variables that you don't want to make them change. We will still have more information about const and let. The next thing I'll speak about is data types. So I'll only speak about the fundamental data types, not all the data types. For now, what we want to do is grasp knowledge on JavaScript, and one of the ways is to do fundamental stuff. So one of the things that I'll define data type is string. I will mention about numbers or integers. It's called the numbers or integers, which will include, so for this will include decimals and also full numbers, or can we say whole numbers, something like that. Another data type that I will mention is Boolean. I will also mention about objects. Objects, this includes this will include arrays, but I can define arrays as its own data type. But for now, just know that an object has many items, and one of them can be an array. So when we say our message is hello world, when we mean string, it's just like a word, something like that. So when I say message hello world and put this message in this quotation marks, what I mean here is you can use single or double quotation mark depending on you, but all of them will work the same. So that is a string. When I say pi is equal to 3.142, so when you see something like number, that is a number, like just a number or an integer or a decimal. So those is another data type. Data type is how you want your data to be stored. In which type do you want it? Do you want it to be string? Do you want it to be a Boolean? So a Boolean is, for instance, I can say constant a Boolean is either something that defines true or value. For instance, I can say is April. Maybe this is not April, so I can use false, or I can say is March. So this man, like just defining something to define it as a Boolean. So when something has true or false value, that data type that is being used is a Boolean. The next thing that we will move is an object. So object we will define two, which is object itself and an array. So for instance, when I want to define an object or a list, let me just use object. Then I can say object, and we can divide it with curly brackets. This is an object. For instance, if I want to store the name of a student, I can store it in an object, which I will say the name and then the value. Maybe my name is Esquin Kiboy. So what I mean here is that an object is just how to store data with a key, let me say key value pair. So the key here is name and the value is Esron Kimboy. We can add more than one items, which is like I can say name and I can say Moses Boy. So this is one of object, key value object. It has key value pair. Another way we can define is I can define my array. So just do an array which will define with this. So it can store more than one items, but not in key value. It can store in a key value, but right now you can only like store one items. Each, if you want to store in a key value, you will need to put curly brackets, which is name, Skin Kimboy, and then another thing, you can store numbers to 254, obvious for the love of the country. You can store a string, which is like what we can use is Mommy Foundation. We can store as many items as possible. So one of the uses of an array is when you are given a list of students, like you have 5 students and you want to store those data in single items. So one of the things you will use is store them in an array. So define your array and then store those items in an array. Um, Another thing is, if you want to store, so you have 5 students and then you have been given their names. So another data type that you will choose is store the student name in an object, and then now store all, also store a single student in an object, and then store different users or students as an array. What can yes, I will use 2 examples. So I have constant, I have student 1. So I have been given their name. Maybe their name is maybe Jacob. So, and then constant student 2, their name is Samuel. So one of the ways I can do is I can store students and say students is equals to, in an array, to be student 1, student, sorry for the hiccup, student 2. So if for this case I decide to just say like I just want to return these students, so to print these students, it will print here Samuel, and so I don't know why it's not, it's taking me that way. Okay, so now it's printing here, so it's printing Samuel, Jacob, and Samuel. So we are storing this. Another thing you can do, if you want this in the future to be very to define, because you might be given student 1, they are called Jacob, but at the same time they are in class 5. So, or just let me just use the grade 5, and then grade, and then for Samuel they are in grade 6. So one of the things that I can do is store this information in an object. So what do I mean about that? So what I can say is, let me just use let so that we can learn about definition, and then instead of here I can say student 1 is equals to an object. So as you can see already, Jacob has been replaced as an object. That's why we are using let here. So when I want to do this, I can say the name is Jacob. The name is Jacob, and then the grade, I can use the grade is 6. I can say grade 5. Yeah, no, not grade 6, but grade 5. So this is an object. But now what we are seeing here at the bottom is the value of student 1 is as the name and has the grade, while Samuel has only Samuel. So this meaning we have an object, we have an array, how to store more than one data, but also objects, for instance, as we mentioned, it can store more than one data, because here student 1 we store their name and grade in the same data type, which is an object. So I hope I'm clear. But for the Boolean and for the string one, we are just using one value, or we are storing one value. So there are other things. There are other things such as null values when something you don't want to have anything. So for instance, I just wanna let student 3. So just having null value or undefined value is just defining student 3. So if I have a print student 3 here, should be student 3 should be null, so it should be undefined. So that's another data type that is assigned to anything that you have not assigned any data type or any value to it. You can also define student 3 or student 1, for instance, what we mean by Jacob. You don't know this student, you are just being given this as one student, so you can define it as null. That means this student is null value. Like, let me just use example of this Samuel so that we can see the changes. So you don't know this student. So you can see that student 2 here, its value is null. You don't know him. You don't know him. But now you can say student 2 is equals to Jacob or Samuel. Let's use our favorite Samuel. So as you can see, we have the value Samuel. So you have, so there are that data type of null and undefined. So in case of any questions, just let me know, or I can just come and to do the definition of this. The next thing that I'll do is basic operators, so or operators in general. So when I speak about operators, I'll speak about operators, comparison operators, and then maybe logical operators. Let's just still use our function, which is like print welcome, which we have defined. So for now, we are not returning any student. So what do we want to do? We want to talk about operators. And we talk, when we talk about operators, we talk about logical, we talk about basic and comparison. Comparison. So let's start about basic operators. So basic operators definitely is a plus, minus, times will be this star, and then division will be this slash, and then the next thing is modulus to just get the remainder, or exponential when you wanted to double multiplying. So those are some of the basic operators. We'll majorly deal with this 4, but we will also include modulus. Just modulus is the remainder. So yeah. So I will just use simple variable naming, which is not recommended. Just naming something X, A, P, C is not good. But for now, what I will use for simple operations is just dividing those like simple variables. Like I can send constant here is equals to 13 P. So if I want to divide more than one variable in one line or 2 line, I'll just use comma, which is equals to, I can say equals to 4. And then I can define C equals to 2. So one of the things that I can do here, I can return A plus P, which we expect it to be 17, I guess. So that's what I guess, 17. The next thing, so I'll just think this one is so don't bother with that. Just I'll just put them here so that this other one can come at the top. Okay, just put here. Nice one. So we have 17. So what we know, let's note what about the student 1 and student 2. So what we have here is A plus B is what we expect is 17, which we have seen here. We can add more than one items. Plus C will be 19. Another thing we can do is we can say A plus B minus C, which is 15. If we divide A minus B plus C, so we can see is 11. So what we can say is, if we say 13 minus 4, what is the value of 13 minus 4? That should be 9. And then plus 2, which is equals to 11. If we say 4 plus 2, I want to do another thing of saying minus C. Not minus C, but minus P. So we get 7. So if we say P plus C, so P plus C will be, so A minus P 13 minus P, which is 4, we get 9. 9 plus 2 So 9, so we will get 9 plus 2, which we get 11. We get minus 4, which we get 7. So that is it. It will use BODMAS for that case. But if I say like I just need to define this first, so we'll put into brackets. So that means I need to say P plus C, which is 4 plus 2, which is 6, minus 6 minus 4, which is 2, and 13 minus. So it will use BODMAS. So in any case you do any operators, these basic operators, just know that it will use BODMAS. So let me remove that. We'll just do that format. So another thing we can say A divided by B, which will get 3.25. If you don't want to get 3.25, what you can use is the modulus. Just to give me the remainder, you can just decide to use the remainder. I can also say A times B, get 52. So those are some of the operators. So the next thing that we can do after speaking of operators which are basic, we can do comparison. We can say if A is greater than B, let's return, instead of returning multiplication, let's return A is greater than B. So that means like A is greater than B if it is greater or equals to. So for this comparison operators, we have greater than, we have less than, we have equals to, equals to. So for the comparison, if it is equal, you will need to use 2 or 3 equals. But for now, we will just assume 2, which is not like true. But we'll come and define on the later stages what is the difference between equals to, which has 2 equals, or and with the one that has 3. But also, it's upon you to do some of the research on that. So equals to, and then the next thing we can say greater or equals to, less or equals to. So things like that. Those are comparison operators, comparing something with another. So for instance, if A is greater or equals to P, we can do that. Another thing we can say, if A is less, we can say if A is equals to P, then return I am, not even B. Let me use here D, which is equals to 4. If P and D, so this one will return value. So we will just say remove this one. B is equal to D. So for the comparison, what I mean is just to compare. So don't bother about the if statement. That is, the if statement now comes into the conditioning branching. Conditioning branching is just like checking something, if that is true. So yeah, as I mentioned, return this if it's equals to. So just to know that we can use like is equals to 2, or even here we could have just mentioned about printing using console and say A is greater than B. So this one will return true. So that means it is true that A is greater than P. A is less than P. What it will return is false. So you are comparing something with something, an item with an item. So yeah. So comparison is not only limited to integers, but also you can make them on the other stuff like string. You can compare them. The next thing that I wanted to be faster is if statement. So that is conditioning branching. So with the conditioning branching, I can just define if and else. So check how I define if. If is almost like a function. So I have these curly brackets and then I have these enclosing brackets, and then I can use else and then enclose. So this is how you write an if else statement. So for this one I'll just do a return, and for this one I'll just do a return so that we don't see this. So another thing that you can see here, we have an error because if expects an comparison or it expects some conditioning. So for instance, we can say if A is greater than B, just do something. So what we know is A is actually greater than B. So we can return A is greater than B. So as you can see here, let me just comment this out, and then I'll remove it. So as you can see here, it prints A is greater than P. Else we can say just return P, no, A is not greater than P. If we want to see if our return is true, we can change the P to be 14. So as you can see, it says A is not greater than P. So this is just like doing what is called conditioning branching, or just like making that comparison inside, but just if this condition is made, give me this item, or give me this output, return me this output. So also with the conditioning, we can make use of what is called the if else statement. So we can say if A is greater than P, we return A is greater than P. What if it is 13 and 13? What happens? So it will also print this item. But when I want to define if A is greater than P, return A is greater than P. And also, if A is less than P, then I return A is less than P. So I can say else if. I want people to go and read about is less than P, then you return. So that is what you can see now. It's not returning anything because it is not meeting this condition. So it's not meeting the first condition, it's not meeting the second condition, which is else if. So if A is less than B, I can say A is less than P. So I also want to put else. So I can say just else, return unknown, let me say unknown condition. So here it return unknown condition. But what we know here is A is equals to P. So we can add another else statement, which is else if statement, to just make sure that if A is equals to P, you see it hasn't print nothing because it found that this is true. So we can say if that is the case, let's just return A is equal to P. So this is how you do the conditioning using if else statement. This is something that we can do assignment on grading system. So the grading system is where when it's 70 greater than 70, you put an A. If it is less than maybe greater than 60 but less than 70, you put a P. Those are some of the assignments that we'll be giving to understand if you can use both condition and comparison operators. So you can use here one or more than one operators. For instance, A is greater than P, or A is equal to P. So another thing that I can say is A is equals to, you can say A is greater than B, or A is equal to P. As you can see, A is greater because this condition is true. Another thing that I'll speak about is logical. As I mentioned, this we are now going to logical comparison or operators. So on the logical operators, we will be speaking about or. This is or, and this is and then we have not. This is not. So we'll speak about this. So one of the things we'll use is what we have currently. So we'll just say if A is greater than P, or A is equals to P. But for now, what I can use is say C and D. C and is equals to D. What we can say is, let's just print condition met, else let's return condition not met. So what C, what or, this or make sure is one thing, or checks for the first truth value. What do I mean? If, for instance, A is greater than P, what this does is it terminates and prints what it is there. So it checks for the first truth value. For instance, we can say A is less than P, which is false. This we will know it's false definitely because A is not less than P. But or we can see C is equals to D. So it will find this, it will check it is false. For or, it will skip to the next one, check if it is truth. So it will find the truth, the first truth value, and it prints. The difference with that with and is and checks the first false value. So if we say and, definitely here it will return condition not met, because what the logical operator of and looks into is the first false. So and checks for the first false value. So for instance, for this case, it will just check this one. A is less than B. No, it's false. So and won't bother to check on the right side of and if the first condition is false. It will definitely terminate that process and go to the next process. The next one, if it's not, so I can say A is it not P? Not is used for one condition. If not P, just like that. If not P, return condition is met. But now P as a value. So if we use here null, we'll just say like it's nothing. It doesn't have any value. So this not we can use it when we are checking for something like undefined or null value. So mostly that is used for not for that case. Going into that, we have finished this symbol, variables, data type, basic operators, comparison, condition using if, else, and also we talked a little about functions. Because right now, as I mentioned, there are two ways of writing a function, either arrow or using the normal writing function, which will just define the function, the name of the function, and this two curly, is it curly brackets or something, and then this R2. So this is just a function. So print me. Let me just say function. print welcome. So let's say this is function. Yeah, like that. Just this is a function. So this is how you define a function, and this is how you call a function. Simple as that. And we have talked here and here that we can do a return. Just return anything in a function. That's it. Or return just a plus b. Just like that. You will get 13. A plus b. This is null, but let me just add value. A plus b, which is 14. The next thing is to define a global variable. And we have a local variable. So one of the things, as I have seen, like I've already done these items, this is a global variable. These are variables that are outside the function. That is what they are called, the variable. I can define my local variable here and say local variable is equals to 45. So this is a local variable. I can say A is a global variable. So I can say global variable plus my local variable, and I will get 13 plus 14, 45. So when certain item is inside a local or inside a function, it's a local variable for that function, and there's those that are outside. Also, I can make use of this as a global variable. So let's assume I have an if statement which says if P is less than C, I define a variable called C, or I define a variable called F is equals to 20. You see? So if I say here return F plus local variable, so this local variable, so this one is local variable to this function, but for this case it's a global. So this function or this block of code sees this as a global variable. So we can say this is global variable to this function. So this global variable to this function, and this F is local variable to this block of statement. So it depends. Just like if a code is outside a certain like variable. So if right now I say global variable here and then say like F is equals constant is equals to 20, and I say 1 plus global variable to function. So as you can see here, global variable here or global variable to this function is 45. But when I enter this block of code, I said global variable is 20. So for this block of code, it will always use the variable that is inside that block of code. So even if you have defined it outside, you just be careful if you define it or else in that block of code. For instance, this block of code, it will definitely use what is in that block of code. That is what I just wanted to say about that. But we'll have that more and more. The next thing that I want to speak is about passing parameters, and I will speak with this with the default values, and the only thing that I will do is do a simple loop and while loop, and then now I can leave. I can end this first session on JavaScript. So what I can say is parameters are items that are passed to a function. For instance, I don't want these variables to be, I don't want to be defining this variable. So let's say this function of mine is calculate. So it just does calculation. So it is a calculation variable or calculation function. So it calculates parameters. So, and then what I want is, I want it to take two values, just the two values, A and P. And that value is, I will say, the operator. So I just want this function to do, to be used for different purposes. So I can say calculation 1, I can calculate 2 twice or thrice. So what I want is to just return A operator P. What does this mean? Like if I have 2 here, I just want to close this. If I have 2 here, I have another 3 here, and then I pass plus. So what I want is this operator, like if it is plus, it will be plus. Sorry. Let me pass this as string. This one won't be allowed, so I'll pass it the operator as string, and then console.log. I can say the operator. So the operator, I don't know if I use the operator here, it will allow, so it won't. So there's something that I wanted to use. So I can just say if, so I can say if operator is equal, let's choose is equals to plus, then the sign, let's just have it defaulted as plus, or have this let's say be equals to plus. So there is something that I want here to be done, but I don't think it will be possible for that. Let me not complicate. I just wanted to use this sign to do this multiplication. So but I'll just do that. So if the sign of the operator is plus, what I will use is I will return A plus B. So that is it. If the sign, let me just define this for the while, or just like I can use this as a division. Division is this. So yeah. So another thing that I'll do, as you can see here, I'll not return here. I just want to return. So the operator here is plus. What if the operator passed here is minus? So it would bring anything. So I will use my condition, like my conditioning, else if the operator passed is equals to minus. What do I need to do? Return A minus P. So as you can see, 2 minus 3 is equals to -1, which will be printed. So what do I need to bring to attention? That we can pass one or more parameters to our function. We can also send, or we can also assign a default sign, or we can, so for instance, else, we can say else just return, so return A times B. We have just decided that if there is nothing, or just return unknown operator. So if, for instance, we send an empty value, it will return a known operator because it is not known to us. But as I said, we can also decide to have it as this operator to have a default value. So we can say, if that is the case, if we have known unknown, we can just return 2 divided by 3, just like that. Not 2 divided by 3, but A divided by P. So the next thing that I wanted to speak about, or just this, let's just remove this. So another thing that I want to speak about is, let me put here 6, just to get 2 here. Don't want to get a conflict. So one thing that I wanted to speak is having what is called the default value. And so I can speak that's about the default value. So we can say if somebody doesn't pass A, we will just take A as 10. So for instance, if I decide this is, I pass it as null. So if I take it as null or I don't pass it, or I pass a string. So one of the things is, yeah, for JavaScript it will take it as a string. So I'll just use, I'll just, most of the things, if something is optional, in JavaScript you need to put it as, unaweka kama mwisho. Just put this, what can I say? Just put it at the end. So A divided by P, which is like 3. Let's just put it, the first one 3, and then the sign is plus. So this is having it as a default value. So most of it you will use, if something can be optional, you just put it towards the end of it. Yeah. So for this one, what we have done, or just pass it as this way, just leave it, like don't pass it. Just leave it. Yeah, just leave it. But you can use it. So for this example, what I've said is we can use this default as 10. So what this does is P will take it as 3. The operator will be plus, so meaning the operator will be equals to plus, and then what we are returning is A plus B, which is A plus B. And our P here is 3, but our default value for A is 10. Also, if I take this, I don't want to pass it 10, I just want to pass 1. So that means what it will use is, it will not use this default value if you pass a value here. So what it will use is the current value that is being done here. So it will be A plus B, which is 1 plus 3. So that's what I wanted to define about variables. I think for now, what I can say is I will stop there before doing any loop items. I think I'll do that in the next